The first documentation of marijuana usage was during 500 BC in Asia. Here it was used as a medicinal herb.
In ancient Greece, marijuana was used for its anti-inflammatory and anesthetic properties. Others used it for hemp textiles and trade.
Marijuana became common in the Middle East, mainly due to the spread of Islam, where the Quran did not forbid its use.
In the 1600s, colonies were required to grow hemp for textiles and rope.
Dr. William O'Shaughnessy discovered that marijuana helped with many cholera symptoms. Due to this, many extracts were sold in European and U.S. pharmacies.
In the early 1900s, the influx of Mexican immigrants led to the popularization of recreational marijuana.
Massachusetts was the first state to outlaw marijuana, and other states shortly followed. The Marijuana Tax Act of 1937 was the first law to federally criminalize marijuana by placing a tax on it to restrict its access.
Following this, many anti-marijuana movements were formed to try and sway the public's opinion.
Young people from all walks of life have volunteered to take part in a frightening experiment. Next. For a short time each day, they are allowing their brains to be altered. Altered to the degree that paranoia has been induced. Altered to cause loss of motor functions. Altered to have adverse effects on reproductive organs. Altered to produce heart malfunction and destruction of brain cells to the point of memory loss, and acceleration of the aging process. The most frightening part of this experiment is that it is not an experiment. It's what slowly happens to you when you keep smoking pot. No one has to alter your brain. You've already volunteered to do it to yourself.
Dr. William Woodward of the American Medical Association announced that the Marijuana Tax Act was not proposed by the AMA. He argued that medicinal use in no way led to addiction, and imposing this federal tax further inhibited research.
In 1942, marijuana was removed from the U.S. pharmacopoeia. The Boggs Act of 1951 established a minimum jail sentence. The Narcotics Act of 1956 set stricter punishments, such as the first offense resulting in a minimum of 2 years prison and a fine up to $20,000.
In 1961, the United Nations met for the Single Convention on Narcotic Drugs. 97 countries planned to adopt measures that would prevent the use of cannabis for non-medicinal purposes or research.
President Nixon signed the Controlled Substances Act in 1970 that classified marijuana as a Schedule I drug, which stated that it had no medicinal purposes and was too readily abused.
In 1972, the Schaefer Committee recommended that marijuana be decriminalized. President Nixon rejected their opinion and announced that a full-on war against drugs was necessary.
Marijuana was decriminalized in the Netherlands in 1976.
In 1996, California passed Proposition 215, making it the first state to legalize medical marijuana in the United States.
Soon after, many states followed their example.
Colorado and Washington were the first states to legalize recreational marijuana.
More than 20% of people over 21 can legally light up under state law. America's come a long way from associating pot with debauchery, violence, and murder.
Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell.
That was 80 years ago. Later on, in 1969, only 12% of the country supported legal marijuana.
Public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse.
Drugs are menacing our society.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it, and didn't inhale.
Incarceration model that we've taken, particularly around marijuana, does not seem to have produced the kinds of results that we've set.
Now, 60% of the country says it should be legal in all time.
In 2017, recreational marijuana had been legalized in 8 states as well as D.C.
The tax revenue that was generated by these sales is projected to reach a net total of $3.6 billion in 2017.
From medicinal and recreational marijuana sales, Colorado alone has grossed $47.9 million last year.
And the state of Colorado is reaping the benefits as well. Sales and excise taxes on recreational cannabis are over 25%.
Your total is going to be $147.77.
Marijuana dispensaries were required to turn in January tax reports on Thursday.
We paid about $190,000 in sales tax that we collected during the month of January.
While official numbers won't be made public until March, the governor's budget office just released its own tax projections. It estimates the state will collect about $184 million in tax revenues in the first 18 months of recreational pot sales. Here's Colorado's plan for spending that money. $40 million automatically goes to public school construction. That was mandated by voters. Then the governor wants to spend about $85 million on youth prevention and substance abuse treatment, $12.4 million on public health, about $3 million on law enforcement and public safety, and nearly $2 million on industry oversight. While not everyone agrees on how that money should be spent, and although still early, there's no denying the apparent economic boost
20, 40, 60, 80.
that's come from recreational pot sales. Ana Cabrera, CNN, Denver.
As of 2017, the World Health Organization reported that 147 people smoke marijuana. Iceland ranked first, followed by the United States, and then Nigeria.
The National Institute of Health reported marijuana use starting as early as 8th grade. By 12th grade, usage increased to 35.6%.
Males make up 2/3 of the smoking population, but this gender gap widened between 2007 and 2014.
Currently in the United States, a majority of smokers identify as white, followed by Hispanics, African Americans, and then Asians.
As you can see, marijuana use is extremely popular in our culture today. Movies began including scenes where characters smoked marijuana in the 1990s. From there has been an exponential increase.
The large presence of marijuana in our culture can be said to have led to its normalization. Many other famous individuals have also referenced it in pop culture.
Let's talk about how pop culture loves marijuana. Some celebrities have built their careers around marijuana. Looking at you, Snoop Dogg.
It's too bad, man. I just stopped smoking yesterday.
Afro Man had a song called Because I Got High.
Because I got high. Keep going. Because I got high. Hey, do that over, because man. I got high. Come on, man. Come on.
Most people only know Afro Man because of that song. The movies especially love weed. We have to pay homage to the grandfathers of marijuana, Cheech and Chong. Up in Smoke is probably one of the first weed movies a lot of people saw, and it's still celebrated.
Am I driving okay? I think we're parked, man.
Of course, we got to talk about Dazed and Confused. All right, all right, all right. Where would Matthew McConaughey be if he hadn't played a stoner? You can't mention Matthew McConaughey and not talk about Sean Penn and Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, these two guys elevated the standard for the stoner surfer. Now, it's practically a part of the cultural zeitgeist. Dave Chappelle, before he was Dave Chappelle, was Half-Baked. Such a fun movie. It's a classic among stoners. It's a classic among people who aren't even stoners. Marijuana got real profile for a while there with Showtime's Weeds. Mary Louise Parker played our favorite drug dealer ever. It was about romance, it was about economics, it was about weed. So films like Reefer Madness and things like that made people think about hippies and marijuana as part of the counterculture. But now marijuana is very much a part of our culture. 420 used to just be kind of like a pop culture fun event. It actually now is part of a national conversation about should marijuana eventually be legalized in all states. So we're not advocating drug use, but we're just saying that if you're into 420, roll with it.
Because of these trends, it could be hypothesized that in the coming years, marijuana usage could increase and many other countries or states may begin to legalize it as well.